Welcome to the Startup Support Surgery podcast, where we light the entrepreneurial spark in medics and healthcare professionals. Join me, Dr. Joe Watkins, GP, business coach and co-founder of The How People, on a journey to discover where your medical know-how meets the business world. This will help you find some clarity on how to balance work, passions and family so that you can gain more freedom and control over your life, but also continue to help people, which is actually why most of us went into medicine to start with. Embarking on this entrepreneurial adventure is not easy. It is a roller coaster of emotions, but it's hugely rewarding and exciting in the process. Drawing on my 20 years of blending medicine and business as a GP, I am here to share experiences, insights and lessons. Expect lively chats, expert interviews and real-life stories from medics who have taken their own path. Let's break free from traditional healthcare norms and explore more innovative ways of making a real difference to people's health and well-being, along with paving the way for a brighter future for us as healthcare professionals. Oh, don't miss my free PDF called From Stethoscope to Startup, which is an 11-page guide in the show notes full of practical help and advice. This is your roadmap to kickstarting your journey with us. Enjoy the show. I am delighted to be chatting to Dr. Andy, the Moneywise Doctor, who I think can only be described as the Martin Lewis of money for medics. Andy's the founder of MoneyWiseDoctor.com, and he leads a community who are dedicated to guiding medical professionals away from costly financial pitfalls. He has got 13 years of experience as a doctor, an entrepreneur, and an investor. And he has got a skill set and a framework that enables him to be able to assist others to achieve financial success. Money is something we struggle with as doctors, and I've got two people that I'm interviewing over the next series of podcasts about this, including Andy. Everybody is in different financial situations, but for us to learn how to manage our money better as doctors and as business owners, that is only going to have beneficial effects for us and for our families for the future. So I am super excited to invite Andy here today. But your fact for the day is that you're a bit of a piano player, I like to see. You played the piano since you were 14 and you were a musical director in your teens, is that right?
Yeah, but I clearly didn't make it to Juilliard, so I chose medicine over music.
I love that. Do you still play?
Yeah, I've got one here now, but surprisingly, my wife wanted a piano. She doesn't play piano, but some years ago, after our second year of marriage, she wanted a piano. And so I'm ordering one. I was in Falmouth then in a GP surgeon. Okay. Now maybe my 1-year-old goes and taps around it, and I still play for fun. Yeah.
Oh, that's lovely. And I'm sure now, as they get bigger, I'm sure you'll revisit that, I think, and get that out again. So that's fantastic. Well, thank you so much for joining me, Andy. It's been lovely to be in the kind of same world as you over the last couple of years and seeing what you're doing. So for those of people that don't know you, or for those people that have just found you, tell us, who you help and how you help them.
Yeah, Joe, thank you for having me on the podcast. And it's a delight. We eventually got here. And what you described is you're the second person to describe me that way. I was the first, as the Martin Lewis for doctors. Basically, Dr. Andy Egwim, I trained as a doctor, so the doctor is real, not like Dr. Dre. And I trained as a GP, but I've been investing for over 20 plus years and teaching personal finance, even back when I was in med school to my consultants. What we do now, I started Moneywise Doctor, which is a platform that helps doctors avoid costly financial mistakes. So basically, doctors in the UK are now getting a lot of attention from Canada, US, and several other places. We do run a podcast and have an email newsletter that will send out every Sunday with full of tips and stuff that can help you with investing, tax efficiency, and all of that. So far, we've helped about 10,000 doctors avoid costly mistakes over the past 2 years.
Wow, amazing. So this is what we've got now. We've got a real community. We've got a podcast newsletter. You've helped 10,000 doctors. I know you've got programs and support that you can give one-to-one. And I'd love you to tell us all of that at the end. That's fantastic. So you've been doing this investing in personal finance since you were a junior doctor, where did this come from? Have you always had a fascination with money? Was it something you were taught as a child? Where did it come from?
Actually, I started when I was 18, more towards like before my 19th birthday. So I was born in a family where, like go to school, get a job. My parents were great, but didn't have any money. Basically, had to borrow some money to get into med school and all that, and run businesses and side hustles in med school to pay my way. But I read a book called Rich Dad Poor Dad when I was 18. I started getting fascinated and understanding the fact. I knew something was missing. I saw a lot of adult graduates who just worked and worked and always struggled a little bit with money. Good people, hardworking people. After I read the Rich Dad Poor Dad, it sort of opened my eyes to that world of personal finance. I just realized not just enough to work really hard as a doctor. And then I started delving into, building a business and investing. That's when I came across The Intelligent Investor. It's a really dry book, tough to read book, but it was written by Warren Buffett's mentor. And I
Right.
admire Warren Buffett. So that really took me down the route of value investing. And I started, my very first investment was about a dollar now. If you want to check it, was about 1,000 naira back then in Nigeria. So I actually started around 19, lived through the stock market crash of '08 and '10 flash crash. COVID 2020 crash was also very helpful, helped me achieve a level of financial freedom that allowed me to leave my salaried job 3 years ago. Yeah, so it's been like a lifelong thing for me, even before I became a doctor.
So did that came from a place of need originally, the need to finance your way into medical school? Did you always have this sort of, was there always this two sides to what you wanted to do, or did you really just see it as a function of providing for you to be a doctor?
I found out that it was a topic I originally started out of a place of need, but then I found out that things around finance just came to me. I understand it, I understood it, and I can explain it quite clearly. Like I said to you, back in med school, I'll run seminars and my consultants will attend on investing and all that stuff. So it started from a place of need and went to a place of fulfillment where it's actually something that if I want to blog about leadership, nobody wants to hear about leadership. I ran an e-commerce store for years, which was profitable, but it was dry. It wasn't fulfilling to me. And then I started this stuff, Moneywise Doctor. Prior to that, I had New Dimension, where I teach on finance. And suddenly, it takes off like basically like a rocket because that seems to be what people identify or associate me with and something that I could be happy to do till I'm 90. So
Yeah.
it started from a place of need and then became something that I really get a lot of fulfillment seeing people avoiding costly financial mistakes.
So let's go into that a bit more. Because what you've described there is like the evolution and the pivoting of an entrepreneur and a business, isn't it? And we talked about this a lot. I loved it. I was on your podcast and we talked a lot about entrepreneurship.
Yeah.
I'm hearing somebody that just got out there and did it. How's that entrepreneurial journey before we get too into money? How's that process of owning a business, running it as a business, tweaking the languaging, the language, getting out there, helping other people? How that entrepreneurial piece? How do you enjoy that?
I love it. I love the 0 to 1 basically because okay, my first business was back in med school and then being able to stay in your dorm room, in your hostel room, create a concept and then build it, get it out there and get real market feedback. Because at 21, 22, you're not worried about mortgage or failing. Look, it's not a fail, it's a pivot. So starting out back then really helped. And it meant that, okay, by the time I moved to the UK and almost had to start again from the scratch, like I mentioned to you, I once had to work in a factory in Nottingham for 6 weeks. Having start from the scratch, I always knew that, look, you can then work as, you can build a business. But the journey has always been like find a need, find out if it's painful enough for someone to pay for it, and then package it and get it out in a form that people want to pay for it. We employ a sort of like 991 approach. So 99% of our content is free for our 99% of our audience. But then there's a 1% of the 1% who want more support, coaching, want to get faster to their financial goals, and want to get hands-on support with investing, tax efficiency, and all that. And that 1% of the 1% get like the premium stuff and pay for the rest of the 99%. And that has
Yeah.
always been the model we've used to run businesses for years.
Yeah. And that's a model that I think a lot of doctors, when they start out, there's this fear of giving too much away for free. People worry about, doing too much. In fact, I was talking to somebody this morning who's just kind of getting going. And even the concept of doing market research and having, endless calls with people to really find out what they want feels uncomfortable. It's like, well, I shouldn't be working for free. I should be working for money. So how do we get that balance right?
I love it. I love it. So here's the thing: working for free. You're not working for free. You're working for information. You're working for insights. 2 years ago, I had a GP who worked for me. She's still working for me as a volunteer. Wrote to me and offered to work as a volunteer for a whole year and for 6 months, and then decided to stay for 18 months now. And each time I offered to pay her, she says no. She says she's learning a lot in the process. She's seeing the behind the scenes and actually seeing what it means to just start something from the scratch and then build it out. So I don't think it's working for free. Like all the people who read my posts and articles and stuff, one is the public service. Secondly, they're giving me feedback to know what is really valuable. And thirdly, they are paying. They're paying with their time. You and I know that time is the most valuable asset. It's the lack of time that eventually kills you as an entrepreneur. So, like you're a coach, you're saving people time from mistakes you've made in the past, things you've learned. You're saving them having to make the same stumbles, the same thing after 20 plus days of investing and tax efficiency. I've studied codes, tax codes in different countries. I save people with the time to find out when you're 20, maybe you're in your 50s, that you've made a horrible mistake with your finances. You can't go back. So yeah, I'll work for free, Joe. I'll work for free. I've offered to work for free for people and offered to pay them to work for free. And some were fine, some said no. But I've worked in NGO settings and all that stuff. So I have no problems working for free. Obviously, some people feel, oh, it's an exploitation and all that. I'm like, you do you.
Yeah.
But I don't know, do whatever you want. But if you want to build a business that is scalable and
Yeah.
sellable, sometimes you have to just do what you need to do.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So, I love that, working for insights and working for feedback.
Yeah.
And I think, it would be interesting to talk to you about this, whether you're looking to grow this as a like performance business, as you say, or a lifestyle business. I'd like to come back to that. But even if you're growing a lifestyle business and you're setting yourself up as a personal brand and you're giving yourself the opportunity to work privately without just seeing it as sitting and renting a room in the local private hospital, there are so many other ways of you helping patients or clients that need your support with your skills. You are working for feedback and insights, because until you've had those people in front of you outside of an NHS setting and a 10-minute GP appointment, lots of people say to me, oh, well, I see these patients all the time in general practice or in clinics in the hospital. It's not the same. You're literally scraping the surface of their problems. You've got to get deep. And that's what you're paying for, like you say, those insights.
Exactly. Here's how I think about it. If you think about med school, there's a lot of work for 6 years for free. You you're not getting paid anything. You're getting trained right. So you sometimes need to get your customers to train you in your business. If you look at it again, if you think, okay, an entrepreneurial mindset is very different. If you work in a salary job as a doctor, consultant, JP, or even if you're looking, you know that you get paid for 1 hour you get paid or a month's work. But entrepreneurs, like leaders, eat last. First of all, you have to serve the food and get people to eat, and then you get paid at the end. No, you might not get paid. There's no guarantee that you get paid. But if you don't get paid, either you earn or you learn. So if you don't earn money from that experience, then you learn a lot of stuff. I think that's the way to look at it. And
Yeah.
yeah,
And I think sometimes medics find that hard, don't they? Because you've got to a point where you're really good at what you do. You're an expert in your area. You've been doing it for ages. It's super easy. Everything's just flows. And then you think, oh, I'll explore this other area of entrepreneurship and business. And you kind of like, you're basically going completely onto a different railway track and then wondering why it's really bloody slow, because you've got all of that learning ahead of you.
yeah.
I don't know about you, but when I started out, particularly in the online space, I think my head was turned by people saying, oh, you can earn 10K in 3 months, and then you can
In,
sit in a,
in 3 minutes.
yeah, and you can do 5 hours work a week, and you can do that. And what do you say to that? Is that possible? Is that a thing?
My first blog was in 2008, and I started out a weight loss, believe it or not, weight loss expert. I mean, every 21-year-old can teach people how to lose weight. Wait till you're 45 and then teach me how to lose weight. Yeah, but I've been around online long enough to realize that the rules that apply offline apply online. You've got to build a real business, provide some value. I remember speaking in a seminar in 2009 as a medical student, having been on radio, TV, and someone asked, "What are you saying, doctor?" I was med school then. Do you mean you can bring money out of the internet? Can you extract money out of the internet? So it sounded very strange to people back then. But then I saw that the same rules. So one of the business I had back in school was a SaaS, so like a software as a service web SMS. And you had to create like a service where people could use it for broadcast marketing campaign. The same way offline, you sold granola, you had to exchange value. And one eventually we sold clothes online, like had a brand designing clothes and stuff, just because people would see me in seminars and say, "I like your suit. Where did you buy it? It must be very wealthy to afford designers." I'm like, "No, I've got a tailor." They were made it into a proper business. Mescal is easy to promote. So yeah, this whole stuff about a random 17-year-old guy in Dubai telling you, "Oh, standing next to a Ferrari, you can do this and do that." Really? Do you think it was rented? I've been look. You've traveled. I've traveled. I remember being offered a free limo ride, safari tickets in Dubai, first class ticket because someone was trying to sell me property. This was like 5 years ago, just before, more than 5 years ago, before COVID, just before the COVID lockdown, and it's the same rules apply online as offline. It's just that online gives you scale. It gives you permission, like the kind of businesses we run. You can run your business when you're in Canada, when you're in different places, but you still have to build a trust. You still have to build a structure. Sadly, many people go from one opportunity to the other opportunity. They see what you're doing or what I do, and they see the surface. They don't see the process, the building,
Yeah.
and it leads to frustration. And then they turn around and say, "Oh, this stuff doesn't work." Yeah, it doesn't work. It works if you work it.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And so many people at that point, and I think this has happened to me, you reach a certain point, and if you were to push through that point, you don't know what's beyond that. But that at that point you reach it, and then you take a different road, and then you're basically starting again. So all of these people, particularly in my group, when people are sort of looking for their niche and they're struggling with a certain niche, and then they change their niche after 2 years, you're basically starting again each time you make those pivots. And if you haven't really given it enough time, then you're just going to get burnt out, because each time you're starting a different business. And I think for me, certainly with the How People, it was a different thing because there were two of us involved. We both had different needs and wants for our families, and that's, that still is in the background as something we might come back to. But as a business model, it didn't work for us individually at that point in time. But it's easy to run away, isn't it? Just before maybe that breakthrough.
I love that. I love that example. The thing is, with the How People, you obviously feel the need, gave it a good push, and we're courageous enough to say, look, this is not the direction to go. But that's life. Is I can apply the same analogy to investing. Around '07, there was suddenly multiple investing gurus. And by then, I'd been investing for just about 3, 4 years. So, relatively new, hadn't witnessed a stock market crash, was in my early 20s, and everyone was a genius. What we found in investing is that sometimes you take a position, let's say you're a long term investor, you are like me, and you attend like investors meetings and shareholders meeting. Probably I go off to Berkshire Hathaway in Omaha for Warren Buffett's shareholders meeting and all that. But then if you take a position, you invest in something and then you opt out because it's going down or because things are not working, you've guaranteed yourself a loss. But if you've done the work, if you've done the free work of research and checking out what you need to do, or even if you're a passive investor, you buy S&P 500 or any global index fund, if you sell every time the market goes down, you're going to lose. But if you could wait to smooth out the whole journey and give it a bit of time, That way, you're likely to win, okay? You're likely to come out better and get good returns. It comes back to the same thing in running a business. In just a couple of years, I started writing on LinkedIn because most of the things I've been doing, they're not entirely new. So I've had people in my medical school class who join my mastermind now from Canada and UK, and they'll say, "Oh yeah, we need him back then, Mesco. He didn't start this stuff." But when I started writing on LinkedIn last 2 years, I've literally seen some people go from one thing to another thing to another thing, and it feels like you're pushing like a boulder up a hill. It's very tough, and when you're about to get to the tipping point where you're about to take all your learnings and then make it into stuff, that's where many people think, oh, this is not working, and then they give up. And a practical example is our first team, Moneywise Doctor. We made just a bit of money, not a lot. That wasn't our main focus. Our main focus was to generate digital gravity. So have the right content, let people be able to find us, test out what people respond to. Then the second year, I think we probably made like 5x what we made in the second year. And now going into the third year, we've 10x what we made in that second year. So while we haven't yet hit like millions in revenue, but we're seeing the direction things are going and we're finding out what's working. Sometimes you just have to give it a bit of time, but
Yeah.
but know when to quit.
Yeah. So that balance between giving it time and knowing when to quit. And that's when you need mentors and people in your life to thrash it out with, people that understand, people that aren't just going to say, well, I thought you'd go back to the day job anyway, and useful things like that, which is what people say. So yeah, knowing when to quit, knowing when to give it time. So I love this. And I think we could talk about entrepreneurship and business on its own, but I've got to talk to you about money because I know that most medics out there, particularly maybe medics outside of the LinkedIn world and outside of the entrepreneurial space, and people that have worked their way up in much more of a traditional path within medicine, are not great with money. And I think most of us have established that there are ISA wrappers that need dealing with, but I don't know many people that are in that world that are investing, for example. So why do you think that doctors aren't great, usually with money? I mean, that's a bit of a generalization. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it's just people in my world.
I don't think you're wrong. We actually have data to back it. We've done surveys for about 951 doctors and looked at the responses. And those responses are quite eye-opening. They tell you, oh, wow. And we've got feedback from seminars and conferences where you see consultants at the peak of their career just realizing for the first time about some tax issue or tax mistake they're making. I'll give you an example. Most people didn't realize that their pensions are now going to be part of inheritance tax. It's part of their estate if they die after 75. So this is a new rule that has wide-reaching implications for people who, when they pass on and they leave the estate for their family. If they live beyond 75, there's a new regime coming. The new regime coming in from October. So this was announced October 30, Halloween budget. So this is something important, but for some reason, most people haven't heard about it. We've made videos about it, written articles about it, or you come across people who, okay, they know about ISAs, but they're not really using them properly, or even tax allowances and things like that. So what happens is that they tend to work 10 times harder than they should when their money should be working for them. Right. If you look at some of the data we looked at, you look at 75% of medics are afraid of investing. 70% responded no, they don't regularly invest in stocks, bonds, funds, or alternatives. But the problem with that, okay, let's say, do you worry that investing is too risky or complex? Yes, that's 58%. Do you worry that your financial position, these are survey responses, do you feel worried that your financial position relative to your age? Do you feel worried about your financial position relative to your age? 70% said yes. Here's the problem. When I came to the UK in September 2015, I came in with a £50 note. The £50 note, what it can buy now, you're going to need £68, or to be precise, £68, 5p to buy the same thing. So the value of money is being eroded gradually by inflation. That's one issue. And these are not figures we pluck from the air. You can check from Bank of England the inflation rate. So basically, if you were to leave money just sitting in the bank account, over time is going to reduce in value. So that's why medics are working harder and feeling poorer. Number two, if you just save, you're likely to incur savings interest rate. If you don't think about investing, you're likely to incur savings interest rate, which should be declared and taxed. And most people don't realize that they need to pay tax on it. And recently, banks now need to declare automatically to HMRC. For an international audience, HMRC is the tax people in the UK when you get interest. So if you exceed the personal savings allowance, you need to declare it and pay tax on it. So that's not deducted automatically. So there, and also number three, do you know anyone that actually just saved and saved and saved and got to financial independence? It's like basically it's like if you just save money, it's a bit like you're losing part of it every year, but no, not obvious. But the danger is for most doctors weren't taught very much about money. A lot of it is self-discovery. More like doctors decide to go into private practice and don't really know how to run a business, except they go to learn how to run a business. It's probably going to be, oh, I've got the technical skills, but that's not all you need, is it? So skills like finance, tax, investing, setting your money goals, your psychology of money are really core skills that no one ever teaches doctors, none of our decades of learning. And I think that might contribute to why doctors seem to be a little worse off with managing money, but that's not all. I think there are a few other things.
Yeah. I think it's fascinating. I recorded a podcast yesterday that will either be out. I don't know how the calendar's going to run, but with Sarah Brill, who is like a money mindset, sort of more spiritual money coach. So it's been really interesting to have both these conversations quite close together. And she was saying, how much of our attitude towards money comes from our parents and the people around us. But also we were talking about that whole thing as a junior doctor. I think suddenly you come into this, a decent wage, you come into people talking about pensions and tax and then the only reference you have to a finance person is somebody in a suit who's kind of chasing you down the corridor, asking you to commit to a pension, and making you fill in really boring forms. And I think historically it's been a kind of like painful part of our adulting. It's like, oh God, I've got to think about. And I remember even thinking about mortgages, at the age of 30, I was like, I don't understand this stuff. And the fact it's not taught at school is another thing altogether, because this is ridiculous, real life. And I think it's ingrained in us. It's like we don't tend to sit and talk about money like business people do.
Yeah.
Or like investing people do. It's not a normal topic of conversation. It's like, is it dirty? It's a bit vulgar to talk about money. But so many doctors I know have got kids in private schools, cars, holidays, and I've talked about the way that we've managed our money in terms of borrowing back on the house and the way that we have we've released money to be able to travel. But people don't talk about it, do they? Why don't people talk about money?
I think a big part of it is, like you said, it sounds like it's not noble to talk about money.
Not noble.
Yeah, like it sounds like, oh, let's talk about health tech and let's talk about impact. And so people mix up things and suddenly they start a business, but it's also an NGO and at the same time it's a charity and it's an initiative. I think is part of it is the psychology of money around us. Like most people that come to medicine to help people. Most of us, when we went to medicine, we weren't thinking we were going to become a billionaire from medicine. But you also didn't think that you'll get to the point where a doctor, 20% of doctors who I talk to are in severe debts. They are in unsecured debts, not mortgage. These are like senior consultants who have earned over 200K, but somehow end up in massive debt. But we weren't thinking that would be the case. We weren't thinking about the fact that you'll be working so hard and even your income might increase, your salary increases, but it drags you into the next tax band and then you have to pay more tax. It's called fiscal drag. So most people who come to medicine, they think money is secondary and that's great. But here's the other side of it. If you meet a plumber, this was one of the first articles I wrote on Moneywise Doctor. If you meet a millionaire plumber, and a millionaire doctor, let's say maybe a plastic surgeon, chances are the millionaire plumber has more financial insights than the doctor, basically because for you to get to millionaire as a plumber, you probably have had to hire and fire, run a business, have systems and all that. I've got staff and I know the kind of processes you have to get things to work. So millionaire plumber versus the millionaire doctor who could actually work in a practice, get paid good money, maybe in a private posh practice in California or somewhere. The problem with that, it creates an imbalance where there's this whole financial industry, who I'm sitting in the middle between medics and financial industry, who one financial advisor actually said to me that they had like rates for doctors at some point, maybe in the 70s, in the 80s or 90s, because doctors just didn't have a clue. So they got the worst deals. They were doctor deals and all that kind of stuff. So you're dealing with a financial industry who has different understanding of ethics. So if we work in the same setting as a doctor to nurse, or doctor to physio, I believe that when Joe tells me stuff, is likely correct and is likely, even if they're wrong, it wasn't intentional. Financial industry, the standard of ethics is very different, is a little bit different. So you now see these doctors who earn like a fair wage, a decent wage, but know nothing about money, and people from the financial industry who probably know some things about money, but also don't have the same level of ethics. And what happens when money meets experience? The experience gets the money, and the money gets the experience. So that's what happens with a lot of doctors. Down the line, they're thinking, oh, I don't really know much about money. I'm going down to learn about money. And then you meet someone who actually is supposed to be an advisor, but is just like a restricted financial salesperson. So this is one of the ways. And once you get born, then you think, oh, I don't want to talk about money. I'm just going to save my money. So that's one way. I think a lot of it is the values, the psychology, and the background. Like we talk about business, we talk about money. We have no qualms talking about business because you're an entrepreneur, I'm not an entrepreneur. But for most doctors, they've not been in that environment or
Yeah.
stuff like that.
Yeah. It's amazing. So I have a 16-year-old son
Okay.
who has walked past us a couple of times in the background,
You can
who is proving to be quite entrepreneurial and very interested in money and investing. And I think he's quite astounded that we have not, we have a stocks and shares ISA, but we have not done any kind of active investing. And I found out the other day that he is putting 20, but we give him £35 a month, which is a negotiated deal based on what his sister has had. He's brought it back and that's what he's having. And he's investing £20 of that into the S&P 500 or whatever it's called.
Wow.
I don't even understand what that means. And he is off and he's basically like, this, and he's selling golf balls. He's doing podcast editing for me. And he's got a spreadsheet of, what I spend, what's in my skiing savings and what's being invested. So simplify it for me. Like investing, we can stocks and shares ISA is about as much as my understanding goes, much to his deep distress. But if I want to start investing as a 51-year-old, I know you've got a course on this, but as a 51-year-old with no previous investing experience, is it as simple as that? Like, is it actually as simple as downloading the app and doing it? It feels very available now.
Oh, I love it. I love that you brought that up. And kudos to your 16-year-old. What a good way to start. I mean, he's investing almost 50% of his allowance. And guess what? Starting at 16, if you invest in £20 at 16, someone who starts investing at 30, investing three times that amount, even if you're compounding at the same rate, they will struggle to catch up with you. Because basically, it's like a golf ball. You start early. One of the things that helped me to achieve financial freedom eventually, I mean, it took almost 20 years, is that I started at 16. So someone started at 16 years. I mean, not discounting the fact that I moved from one country to another country and almost had to start all over again. But if someone started from 16 years, they invest in £20 and they can stay invested and compound, and it has all this entrepreneurial energy, chances are that by the time he gets to your age, he could actually be retired twice. Basically, because then he can have that freedom at 30 to decide, look, I'm now going to take the leap and start something because I've got enough to cover my expenses and all that. But to answer your question directly, I've had this conversation maybe 1,000 times. Investing and everything around commerce and finance and all that stuff, It's not straightforward and simple, but it doesn't matter. You don't need to know everything. We talk about 7 steps to investing for medics. I would say all you need to do is if you know these 7 steps, you're fine. You don't need, just like if you're a GP, you don't really need to remember all the foramens in the skull. You've known a little bit about it, but you're fine. You're not a neurosurgeon. So when it comes down to investing, there are 7 things I'll suggest. Number one, before you even start investing, step one is obviously financial education. Learn about investing. It's something that is life changing. You took driving lessons, come on, and you want to invest your hard earned money just because you have an app. I mean, having an app makes it easier, but that's also why most people who invest in stock market lose money. When I started investing, you had to go to the stockbroker's office or ring him on the phone, and they'll take like 1 kidney as commission. I'm kidding. I still have my 2 kidneys, but the commission was so huge because I was investing so little. So the proportion could be half of the money I was investing. But now youngsters can download. I think I can say youngster now. I'm approaching 40. So people can download the app and just do 1 or 2 things. But what is their long-term returns? What's their risk-adjusted returns? So number one thing I'll say is financial education. And there's too much information out there. There's a lot of good stuff out there. We've got like over 580 videos on our YouTube, and there's blog posts, there's guides, all totally free. You can start from there. That's financial education. If you don't want to do that, you could read one book. I've shipped one book to over 30 doctors in my community this year. The Psychology of Money is, you can start with one book a year. 2, attend a workshop of finance workshop in a year. 1 is fine. And number 3, one podcast or blog or something you follow every week just to get the snacks, the updates. So it's 111, like NHS 111. That's your financial education. So number 2, I would say before you jump into any sort of investing, I'm a big advocate of paying off unsecured debt. So if you've got a credit card that is charging you 25% in interest, I mean, it's bad maths. The maths is not mathing. It's bad maths to do an investment that's giving you 15%. I know S&P 500, your son, but will tell you, had one of his best years last year. It returned 25% returns on investing. We returned 87%. There's no way to say that in a humble way, but we're very happy with the returns, and we do individual investing, but I've done it for years. But S&P 500, a whooping 25% returns. But some years it might be 10, some years it might be 3%, but it evens out over time, especially when you've got a long investing horizon. But let's say the average returns is 10% you're going to get. What's the point of investing to get 10% returns if you've got a blooming credit card that charges you 25% returns and you're not paying that off? I mean, it's different for a mortgage. I'll say unsecured debt, you've got a car that you bought and you're paying 10%. So that's number 2 steps I usually say, because most people come to us and they think, I want to learn about investing. I want to join the 4 weeks investing deep dive. I'll say, no, you need the foundations. And even after you've learned how to invest, we've had like doctors, consultants, GPs who have to take 3 months to build those 7 blocks before they can then start investing, even after attending the course. And some of them I'm very proud of. 2 of them in particular are 51. So now you said 51.
I'm not too late. Good.
Well, you have lots of time. So that's number 2 steps, I would say. Now, number 3 is really crucial, and that's where most people jump because they're in a hurry. It's just like starting a business. If you don't have the right foundations, you're going to crash at some point. Number 3 is conduct a personal financial audit, obviously. This is all part of investing in yourself before you start investing. And it's very simple. It's like, how much am I spending? How much am I saving? Which debts do I have? How do I want to get to the goal I'm going into? Do I have the right financial protections in place? And we have a free financial audit that most people can do. We can share the links. It's basically like financial health quiz for doctors to check for 1 minute, just like people get like investigations before the doctor treats them. You need to get like a general. We've done this stuff with a GP partner who thought, I haven't got any money to invest. I've got 3 children. One is in med school, one is in dental school, and one is in pharmaceutical school. I haven't got any money to invest. They did an audit and found out they were a member of a subscription, a club, different thing. They were able to find almost £450 every month that was unaccounted for. And that was the money they started investing. Right. Number four is you need an emergency fund. This is where things start getting interesting. So before you start investing, this is all before you start investing. And some people have arrived and they've got like six of this already, and some people have three. So your emergency fund is 3 to 6 months worth of your living expense. Basically, if you need, let's say, £2,000. I know you live in Wales. I live in Devon. Depending on where you live, if you live in Hull or somewhere in the
Yeah.
north, you might need less. If you live in maybe like Cornwall or Devon or London, you might need more. But if you part of your audit will reveal what you need, an average every month, and that could be by getting an average, divide by 12 what you spent in the last year, or just check what you spend. There are multiple spreadsheets. We've got some of them in the community and all that. You can see what you spend per month, and you need 3 months, 3 months worth of that. I mean, it's not a must, it's not cast in stone, but we strongly advocate it. It's one of our 10 rules for
So that
doctors.
you've got access to that in case something
You've
happens.
got access to that. It's got to be in cash. One of the reasons I was able to leave my salary job 3 years ago was because I thought, well, I've got like a runway. I could go like maybe a year, 2 years, 3 years, and be fine. So, but for most doctors who are in a regular salary job, 3 months is usually enough. And it's not just to have the money in cash; it's also for a psychological balance. I've seen when the stock market crashes or dips or stuff, and rational people do rational things. They sell off their stocks and they know that the market might, should recover mostly. And if you've done a good investment or if you've diversified well, like your son doing the S&P 500, you know that, okay, chances are like very high chance. I don't want to say 100%. The market is going to recover over time. But people sell off and panic sometimes because they think I've put in my last money in the market. I don't know what's happening. But having that emergency fund gives you a bit of distance from, okay, and also it makes sure that not everything becomes a crisis. I've had a doctor couple in my community who their boiler blew up in the same month and their car had an issue and a relative was sick and they needed to take out private medical insurance. So all this happened and they didn't have to sell up their investments because they had that emergency fund in place. So that's number four. Now, number five, we're still talking about setting up the business. Number five is the part where, I talked about with Ruth on my podcast, your defense. You have to have some financial protection, life insurance, income protection. You don't want anything to wipe you out. You don't want things to happen that means you don't have to sell your stuff. So if you have your life insurance in place, income protection, so that even if you can't work, you still get paid. That doesn't mean you sell your investment, because if you want to sell your investment, it might be at the wrong time. It might be when other people like us are trying to buy bargains. And of course, defining clear goals. So these are all sort of like steps to start investing. Now that that is out of the way, we can talk about investing. How does that feel?
I think what you've just described, these 5 steps, is you're building up you're building up somebody's education, and it's like stocking your defenses so that you don't have to sell your investments. That's what you're saying, isn't it? So that we don't see this investment as something that has to go when the shit hits the fan.
Exactly. I couldn't put it better than that in such poetic terms. Yeah. So those are the 7 steps. And of course, there's the set your investment goal and, your continuous education. Now, the next step is as a doctor, let's say you're busy, you're doing a lot, you're a mom, you've got like a coaching business. And not everyone needs to become all nerdy about investing like me. I start looking at financial statements and cash free. What was it called? Looking at it like income statement, balance sheet, and cash flow statements of companies, or doing all those investigations. 99% of professional investors, people who do this for a living, wearing the nice suits and ties and speaking in a very posh accent, has been in the best schools and use all sorts of computer programs. 99% of them, over the last 30 years, even longer, have failed to beat the average market returns. 99% of them. I did an article to that effect 2 years ago. It didn't make me very popular with wealth managers, but my community is doctors, not wealth managers, so I don't mind a little bit of hate. Right. So 99% of them, even with these are smart people, they're not dumb. And there are reasons for that. Part of that is that they charge a fee. They charge fees that could be quite high and impact your returns. Two, when the markets are down, sometimes they are forced to sell because people want to draw out money because they panic and they want their money. They haven't got permanent capital to invest. Three, it might be that they wouldn't take like they are going against the average market, but they will not take proper risk because investing you need to take risk where is important. If you're a fund manager, you're not just buying the whole market, but they will not really take big risk because they'll think, oh, if I buy the safe thing, if I buy Unilever, if it doesn't do too well, people say, oh yeah, it's Unilever is fine. But if I find this startup company or a company that is really doing well, is underpriced, is undervalued, if I invest in it, if it goes and does very well, like I've invested in startups, if they do very well, I could 100x my return. But if they do poorly, people are going to say, why? What are you thinking investing in XYZ corporation? So they're not going to take those risks because in the investing game, especially a lot of wealth managers want to, appear sensible. So what happens is that they eventually mirror the regular market returns, but in addition, there are their fees. In
Yeah.
addition, there are
So when you say they mirror the other mark, you mean they mirror what you could do yourself, what you could do with an app or with an investment, not passive investment, but your active investment,
your passive investment.
your passive
I
investment.
was saving that up for the next point.
Oh, right. Okay. I
but,
was just checking I understood.
but
Because I think I've heard that somewhere. So what you're saying is the posh boys, let's call them
and
that,
girls.
the posh boys in the ties, the posh boys and girls, thank you. But when you take into account all of those things that you've just said, plus the fact you have to charge them fees, continue. I think I'm just like listening in my head, make sure
you are very spot on. If you take the active investors and look at their records versus the S&P 500, which is the average, what is generally considered as average market, 99% of them don't outperform the S&P 500. This has huge
right.
implications. This is data going back decades. Now, here's the thing. If Joe, you're not Joe Public, but if Joe Public says, look, I don't really understand this investing thing. You know what? I'm just going to, what's your son's name? I'm
Jinx,
just
he's
going
called.
to go ahead with like Jinx and just buy the average market returns. And I'll explain why S&P 500 is considered an average market. I'm just going to buy into that investing. I'm going to do it passively. I'm not going to try to time the market because time in the market is better than time in the market because I don't know whether the market is going to go down. I'm just going to pound cost average. Every month, I'm just going to put 20% of my income, which is what we tend to recommend or what we tend to suggest. 20% of your income as a doctor because most people start late, so they don't have time to do 10% like the general public. If you're doing 20% of your income and it's set up to happen automatically and it's going into your investment portfolio and is buying the S&P 500 or a global index fund, I will explain that too. That way, you're doing it passively, it's running in the background, you're not doing anything about it. You're going to beat 99% of active investors. That sounds like a good deal to me.
Yeah, that sounds great.
So, except you've got an edge or you think I've got 20 years of experience with proven track record. And even at that, I'll still say you need to be careful because S&P 500 seems like yeah, it's just average, but average is great. Over a period of time, it keeps compounding and all that. Yeah. So that is one big thing that if you're a doctor, you want to start investing, that's it. That's where to start from. After you've done the
Yes.
7 steps, understanding that alone will inform the next step of our discussion.
Right. I understand that. And if I understand it, then other people will. But essentially, you're looking at taking 20% of your income. And if you can put that into something like the S&P 500, but only if you're not then paying, ridiculous amounts of money on your credit card. You're spending £500 a month on stuff that you don't need to. So all of those initial steps that, to be honest, nobody likes doing this stuff, do they? Like I sat down and did my accounts the other day and it kind of makes me a rash. But, the idea of going through your statement going, oh shit, another coffee. Oh no, another coffee. But that's what you're saying is that actually we have this amazing option now with technology where we can be we can be doing something that outperforms something that, like you said, 20 years ago, you'd have to go to a stockbroker to do.
Absolutely. And just to preface it, I'm sure we know this, Joe, between us, but just for whoever is watching, we're not giving any specific financial advice. We're not asking you to take 20% of your income and put in S&P 500. We're just two doctors chatting on the internet.
Yes.
And Joe. Yeah, but...
Absolutely. No financial, and other things are available, but no financial advice here at all.
Yeah, but basically, this is how people have won for years. And why am I talking about 20%? Let's just say, even if you don't do 20%, but why we're doing this is to tie it into the tax strategy.
Right.
There's a special tool in the UK, which you've mentioned, called ISAs. And I've looked at Canada, Australia, different markets. I've invested in multiple countries, and there's nothing quite like the ISAs. Before we come back to the ISAs, I'm just going to tell you a little bit about the market averages. Like S&P 500 is just basically the top 500 companies in the US not based on their performance, based on their size. The posh way to say that would be based on capitalization, but it just means based on their size. They are big. Capitalization is basically if you take the number of shares they have in the market and multiply it by their share price. Another fact that an average doctor investor doesn't need to know. But basically, S&P 500 is the top 500. You probably will be able to name them if I asked you to just name some companies. Can you take a wild guess?
Yeah, Google, Apple,
There you go.
Amazon.
There you go. 3 over 3.
Yeah, this is another conversation, isn't it, around the ethics of investing, and that's something we talked about a little bit yesterday, and that's something, when Jinx came downstairs and said, "Would you like to invest in a potash mine in the Congo?" was my example. I was a little bit like, "Oh God." And we've got to recognize, haven't we, that where this money is going and what it's enabling companies to do, which is a whole nother podcast probably.
Yeah, but that is really, really a crucial point to make. But if you invest in S&P 500, basically what you're doing is you're taking a risk management approach called diversification. You're diversifying your investment rather than trying to find the potash mine in Africa, or you're trying to find the next tech company. It's like trying to find a needle in a haystack. So you say, no, I'm not going to do that. I'm too busy. I can't do that. Most professionals are not doing it. I'm going to buy the whole haystack. So the top 500 companies in the US tends to mirror the market averages anyway. They're a big part of the market anyway. And for some people, that's not diversification enough. Again, this is why everyone needs their own personal financial investing strategy. For some people, it's going to be a global index fund like FTSE All World Index, where they buy the top 7,000 companies in the world by size, of which you find that S&P 500 dominates the first 500. Right. And for some people, they might want to look at FTSE 100, which is the top 100 companies in London, which is not really a big representation, like 5% of the global market. So this is the first thing you're thinking about. I want to start investing and I want to start buying stocks, which is what we have time to do because there's bonds and treasuries and all this stuff. But stocks is basically if you've got like at least 5 to 10 years that you can invest, that gives you time to grow because then you're buying into shares of companies where people are actually going to work for you while you do your own job. So this is diversification as I describe it for people who are starting to invest. Now, the second thing I was going to talk about was something you mentioned, what you're investing in. I've had doctors write to me to say, "Oh, I'm Muslim," or I don't want to invest in something that is not Sharia compliant." Or some people think, "Oh, it's not about their religion, but their ethics and their values. They don't want to invest in a weapons company." So there are S&P 500 that are curated that are called ESG. So environmental, I think the S is social and governance. So there are S&P 500. They are all similar investment ports, but they would extract or remove companies that do stuff like that you don't want. Obviously, that means less diversification. That might mean less returns or less risk-adjusted return. But again, it's your money. You're deciding how you want to express your investment. So that's a place to start. So far, how are we doing?
Oh, great. I am loving this. I could talk to you for hours. We're about to talk about the ISA wrapper thing. I don't want to, obviously people can find out more about what you do. We're going to signpost everybody just to sort of make sure that we've gone through these 7 steps. The ISA stocks and shares thing, can that be part of this? Is that what you were going to talk about?
Absolutely. It's one of the 7 steps. So the way I look at taxation and investing, I think they are married. I think if Joe, for instance, Joe Public, not Joe Watkins, were to invest £20,000, and these are things we had to learn the hard way. If you were to invest £20,000 and we were very able, we had the same ability as investors, we've been fortunate and we have the same returns. Let's say you are putting aside £20,000 over 10 years, how much would that be? Sorry, sorry,
200,000.
200K. Sorry, I shouldn't ask you to do public
That
maths.
took me a while.
I shouldn't ask you to do public math, but you've just done your account, so sharp. So 200,000, right? If over the last 10 years you are putting aside the money and you think, oh, I want to take my retirement now, and it's been compounding, let's say it's been compounding at a fairly good rate, and you were fortunate and eventually you've gone from 200K to you end up with, let's say, things work out too well, and over the 10 years you at least, let's say, double the money or 2.5x the money and it's 500K, you've now gone from 200K that you contributed to a compounded return that's giving you 500K. Now, remember you put in 200K. So the 500K minus the 200K you put in is something we call capital gains.
Yeah.
So you've generated capital gains, more like you bought your house in Wales, you decide to sell it, then you've got to pay like the difference in terms of capital gains, except you buy another house within 9 months. Let me not bore you with that. But capital gains tax, I think it's roughly 24% now in the UK. And last year, one of my emails, so my Sunday email newsletters, the subject was why I'm selling all my shares. Because I knew the Labour government was about to. There was rumors they were going to increase the capital gains. So I had to sell all the shares outside the NISA in order not to have to pay the higher rate of the capital gains tax. So if Joe starts with 20K, I start with 20K, we end up with 200K, Joe ends up with £300,000 in capital gains. You've got to pay 24% of that to the government as capital gains tax. If I do a quick math, 300,000 times at 24%, I don't know if the math will work out. At this point, pull out a calculator, but if you think about it, it's 300,000, so 30K, 3,000, yeah. So that's a whole 72,000. I think so. You've got to pay that as capital gains tax. Do you know how much I'll pay if I've got like my money inside an ISA? Do you know how much tax capital gains I'll pay based on?
If it's in an ISA, yes. I'm going with none.
Absolutely, that's big, isn't it? So you're going to be
right. Yeah. So if your 200 is in an ISA, there's no capital gains on any of it.
My 200 is an ISA. Your 200 is an ISA. We do this 20K over like 10 years. You end up with 500K. I end up with 500K. You've realized capital gains, so now you have to pay capital gains tax of 24%, which will work out at 72,000, I think. And then I have to pay zero. So we're playing totally different games. Now, think about this happening over 20 years. It's not just happening with capital gains, it's happening with dividends, and it's compounding. At the end of the day, you are left with less money, I'm left with more, and we don't even have to wait for 10 years for that to happen. So that's why tax efficiency is really wrapped around investing. And that's not just ISA. That comes into things like if you've got a private pension, like a SIP, if you've got a self-invested personal pension, you want to know, can I invest through my self-invested personal pension? Because we all have an allowance in the UK. You have an allowance of up to £60,000 that you can put inside your pension. And I'll say to people, before you put any money in the market, think about the tax wrapper that you can put it in before you invest. So if you've exhausted your ISA, your stock and shares ISA, the next question is, can I use my partner's stock and shares ISA, or can I invest through them if you run your family as one family office, as a fund? Next step will be my son, maybe his junior ISA, can we utilize it? He's less than 18. Does he have a lifetime ISA? Basically, if he has a lifetime ISA, that means from 18 to 39, the government will contribute an extra £1,000, or basically 25% of whatever he saves in lifetime ISA. And that could be invested as well. Lifetime ISA stock and shares. Then it's all about thinking about what's the tax benefit, what's the tax advantage. So this is quite linked to investing. I think most people start investing without thinking about it, and they would really struggle to get really decent returns and then have to pay off most of it as tax.
I would like to say that the last 30 minutes of my life has been some of the greatest financial advice and guidance I've ever had.
Yeah, that's what I would like to hear. I think our master classes. You ask me why I do why I do. I could be building the next tech health tech stuff and shiny stuff, but it's just getting that kind of feedback and transformation, and people like you see just dropping, and I've been saying it for years. Why is everybody pretending like they're hearing it for the first time? But this is basically we're just scratching the surface because we've not
Yeah.
gone into risk management like asset allocation. You might not want to have all your money in stocks and shares. Like if you're looking to retire in the next 5 years, or you just sold your business, or you have this massive money, you might want to buy fixed income assets like bonds. Like in the UK, we'll call it gilt, which is a fancy name for bonds, government bonds, where there's some market risk per se, but it's not fluctuating. There's no volatility. It's not going up and down. It's like lending money to the government and then they pay you. I'm going to say interest. Yeah, those in finance, we know it's coupons, but for people to understand, it's like, let's say you buy gilt or you buy government issued bonds of 30%, sorry, 5%. I wish I could get 30%. If you get 5%, maybe you get it from Venezuelan government. But I hope I don't end up in Venezuela one of these days. That is the butt of the joke. But if you buy government issued notes or bonds, these are long-term things of 10 years, and the coupon is 5%. So you get 5% of your bonds. 5% of, let's say you put in 100K, you get like 5K in terms of coupons. Just think about it as interest paid to you. It could be paid twice a year. So if you've got like 5% of 100K, you might get 2.5 and then get another 2.5. For some people, that might be like if they've got like a pot of 1 million or 500K, and they might not want to put all their money in the stock market because the stock market could go up, it could go down. I've seen market crashes. But bonds, on the other hand, if you've bought like a 10-year bond, the interest is fixed. Again, it's coupon. We know it's coupon, but the coupon is fixed and you get that fixed interest. But the other types of bond, like you mentioned, Apple, they might decide to raise money, but they don't want to sell shares of their company. They don't want to give up part of their company. They might decide to raise it through borrowing. That's corporate bonds. But again, the bond depends on who is the issuer of the bond. How credible, how able are they to, can they pay? I think UK now is rated AA. That's a credit rating based on their ability to pay. So UK government might find it easier to raise money and they might get away with paying 4%. But the government of the great people of Venezuela, they might have to offer maybe 20% and then still struggle to sell it because bonds depends on who is paying back the money. Can they
Yeah.
pay me? Yeah, that's another
Wow.
aspect. That's asset
Well,
allocation.
that's like advanced level. I think you lost me at bond. But no, I mean, it is fascinating. And I think what the message is here is that, particularly when people have, maybe if they have, inheritance comes to them, we need to be thinking about planning for our own children in the future. There is so much here that we could talk about, but essentially you are the man to go to. Tell people, how to find you. I'll link everything underneath, and I'll link some of those products that you mentioned. I'd like you just to tell us how you'd like people to sort of get into your world first, and then we'll just close with a couple of reflections of a few things that you've said.
Lovely. I mean, there are two key ways. Obviously, we've got like multiple videos, but I think the best way to start, if you go to moneywisedoctor.com/subscribe, then that will give you access to our free course. There's 7 steps course you can just get. It's totally for free. I can walk you through what we've discussed here, Joe, and where to start from. That way you don't feel overwhelmed because our goal is for you to be in charge of your own finances, your own chief financial officer. It will walk you through things from starting to save, invest, saving automatically using our AMAS. AMAS is an automatic monthly activated saving system. So saving and then walk you even all the way to legacy planning, inheritance tax, make sure you don't overpay. Do you have your life insurance and trust? So that's moneywisedoctor.com/subscribe. And number 2 is if you're a healthcare professional, then you can just go to our scorecard. So there's a financial health quiz, which we'll link. Is Moneywise Doctor Quiz, the scoreapp.com, which you can actually take to get your financial health in the next 3 minutes. You can find out how healthy are you financially. But then other than that, I've got like maybe 20 guides on ISAs, on downloadable guides on ISAs, on how to avoid the 60% tax trap as a doctor, things around them, how to claim tax relief. There are many of them. But actually, if you're coming through this pathway, you're likely to get all the available guides on all the stuff we do totally for
Great.
free.
Great. Amazing stuff. Andy, it's been absolutely fascinating. What does the future hold for you and Moneywise Doctor?
We're having fun with it now. At the moment, I've got a few staff on board now, and train them and all that stuff. So, like I said, we got to that point where we achieved that financial independence, and we have the opportunity to carry on doing it and building it and scaling it to the point where we can actually help over 100,000 doctors to become financially independent, get financially empowered to make their own decisions. They might still need the financial industry. Like if you need to do complex things, like you need a mortgage or trust or life insurance, I still speak to an independent financial advisor. And part of what we do at Moneywise Doctor is vetting those financial advisors and making them available for you to say, look, we've stamped our stamp of approval on this one. So at the moment, we intend to, it's like an infinite game for me. I wouldn't be surprised by 90, I'll probably be writing my newsletter. Um, maybe in a different form. It might not be like because as a newsletter writer back in med school, it was paper form. Now it's an email. Yeah, so that's it. The outlook is like we're building our stuff in the background, some software to help, and some AI enabled stuff so that doctors can actually get more information quicker and interact.
Yeah,
that's where we are at the moment.
Sounds like you're building a bit of a legacy by the sounds of things.
Yeah, if you call it legacy, it sounds serious. We're just having a bit of fun here.
It's cheesy, but you're not, you don't, like we briefly touched on this performance versus lifestyle. You don't strike me as somebody, maybe this is because you've done it before, you invest in other businesses, but you have, of course, money is a part of this, but there is more, isn't there? There's more here. You're not chasing the money. You're looking at that purpose piece. This is about education. And it doesn't strike me that there's anything else at the top of your agenda, and that's just wonderful.
Yeah, we don't want to take loads of money from investors and go for performance. We like the life. No, you call it life first. We like the life first approach, and that's where we are at the moment. But if along the line we're getting offers, we're getting approached, and we're getting like collaborators, people want to discuss. If along the line we get to the point where someone says, "Look, we would like to acquire you," and we think maybe it makes sense as long as you don't need me to come and work 3 years in the company. Yeah. We might decide to sell bits of it, but for now, it's like a long stuff that we enjoy doing.
Amazing. Well, you enjoy it and enjoy those kids as well. We haven't even mentioned your lovely wife, who you wouldn't be able to do any of this without.
Yeah, there'll be no way I'll be able to do any of it without Nancy. In fact, she kept asking me, "Is this a hobby or a real stuff?" And I'm like, well, in the meantime, rather than sit and twiddle my fingers, all my friends are at work. I can't go to the beach alone, so.
Oh, well, listen, Andy, thank you so much for your time. Massively appreciated. I know this is going to go down a storm. So thank you so much for coming. Take care.
Thank you for having me. Cheers.
I hope this episode has sparked some new ideas or challenged your thinking. Transitioning from medicine to business is not easy. It's about adapting our skills while embracing the unknowns of entrepreneurship. It can be nerve-wracking, but remember, you are not alone on this journey. Please feel free to reach out to me via direct message on LinkedIn or Instagram, or just shoot me an email at joe@bendylegs.com for support. And don't forget to grab the free PDF from the show notes, From Stethoscope to Startup, which is your go-to guide and resource for diving into entrepreneurship. Many thanks for tuning in. I will see you next time. Thanks for spending your precious time with me.
This has been a Monkey Pants Productions podcast.
Morning people wake up for peace and quiet. McDonald's breakfast people, we wake up for the sweet rush of getting that warm, delicious breakfast right before it ends.
With McValue at McDonald's, get any size pumpkin spice iced coffee for just 99 cents until 11 a.m. And try our pumpkin and cream pie. They're spiced and priced so very nice. Price and participation may vary. Cannot be combined with any other offer.
Ba-da-ba-ba-ba.